lot of millennials out there have a misconception about what is a good investment and what is a bad investment. So I'm going to cover a lot of the bad to not so good to neutral investments that a lot of millennials and young adults think is actually a good investment. So that's what we're going to cover right now. So we're just going to jump right into it. So we're going to cover number one. This one, you hear me talk about this as a neutral investment a lot because in select areas this is a very good investment, but in a lot of parts in the world this is not a good investment. So we're going to cover number one, which is primary residence. So this is your house. Back in the 1950s, everyone, all your parents and grandparents, they'd all tell you 50s, 60s, 70s, your house is the best investment that you can make in your life. No, that's not true. It might be the biggest investment, but it could also be your worst investment too, in a way. So I like to think of it like this. So if you buy a piece of property in a hot city or area like New York or LA or just anywhere in California, to be honest, or where I am in Toronto, Vancouver, I'm sure that there's a bunch of places I'm sure London real estate is really hot, London, England. If you're in one of those places, real estate's probably a good investment because people like to move to the cities and that makes housing be more in demand, makes housing prices go up. But, however, if you are in any area that is outside there or if you're just in a flyover state, if you're in most parts of the world, your primary residence is neutral or a bad investment. It's just a giant source of debt that you're going to have to pay back over time. And the benefit that you're getting of that is just you come home to a nice place. And that's about it. And that you don't have to pay rent. Now, I will say this, that in my mind, even investing in a primary residence is usually better than renting. I mean, it depends on the scenario, but I do think buying a place is better than renting unless you're planning on moving around or you're just a really, really young person that can't afford a primary residence, so you have to rent. But yeah, primary residence, don't think of that as a good investment. Think of it as just a neutral to bad investment, and it gives you a comfortable place to live. And so maybe 25, 30 years down the road, you don't have to rent and you don't have to deal with a landlord or anything. So primary residence, that's a common misconception. That is not a top of the line, top tier investment. That's a neutral to bad one. Now we're going to move on here to number two, which is CD. Which is CD / low interest savings account. Low interest savings account. So CD, what it is, it's just a certificate of deposit. So it's not a good investment because it pretty much just means you're keeping your money in the bank and you expect the interest to add up and over time. So when I was a kid, when I put the money in my checking account, I would get back about an 8%, 7% interest per year. So that was pretty good. That was a good investment back in the day when inflation was only a few percentage points, 3 or 4%, and my interest rate I would get in my checking account was 8%. That's pretty good. That's an okay investment. The low interest savings account, and that's the same thing too. If you put your money in there and it's only giving you 1 or 2% returns every year, that's not keeping up with inflation. So putting your money in your checking account or in a low interest savings account, you're actually still losing money every year because inflation is between 1.7 and 2.5% depending on where your country is, what country you're in. So again, that's not a good investment. I mean, it's better than spending your money. It's better than blowing your money on something that is really stupid, but it's not an investment. It's not an investment. So we're going to move on here. Number three. Oh, marker is not working. Number three here is, oh yeah, this covers a lot of things. Anything that rusts, rots, or depreciates. So people think that, I'll give you there. Okay. People think that buying a car is a good investment, like a nice car, because then you get to drive to work. I mean, sometimes buying a car or whatever can be a good investment. I mean, if you're buying a $2,000 car and that lets you get to a job where you will earn $10,000 more per year versus if you didn't have that car, then that's a good investment. But buying a 30 grand car that depreciates the second you buy it, I mean, the second you buy a car, it immediately 10 grand gets knocked off the top there. So you bought it for 30,000, it's now worth 20,000 just because you bought it. It's not new anymore. So anything like that, rust, rots, depreciates. So buying an old piece of real estate can be bad if it's falling over. anything that loses value over time, essentially. So think of anything that you buy and it immediately loses value, it's not an investment. Even if you think it is, it's not. So, but mainly, the main thing I wanted to mention there was cars. Cars are not a good investment. I know, sure, people think that old sports cars are a good investment, but they're not. They're just like collectible items. So we're going to move on here to, we're going to get to that actually. We're going to move on here to number 4. I always get hate for this whenever I say this for some reason. It's always like 2 or 3 people that are like, no, it's good, you can make a lot of money. Penny stocks. No. No. Don't even think about it. I just had a voice crack there. See, my voice was cracking because it is so passionate about you not investing in penny stocks. I know I'm going to have people saying like, hey, I know this guy that makes a lot of money. Hey, I made a lot of money doing penny stocks. You got lucky. You got lucky. Sure, you may know what you're doing, but for, as I mentioned, for every 1 person that goes into penny stocks, there's 9 people that lose money. And that's just the way it is. It's super risky. You're pretty much gambling with your money. You're gambling your money if you go into penny stocks. It's not a good investment. Because those stocks, if they, think about this, if they lose 1 cent in value or gain 1 cent in value, it can go up 50 to 100% of what you bought it for. You can lose everything. Penny stocks are not a good investment. It's just risky and it's gambling. So whenever you see those ads like, oh, invest in penny stocks, invest in penny stocks. Here, I'll teach you how to invest in penny stocks. No, don't do that. It's not a good investment. We're going to move on here. Number 5. Number 5 here is, oh yeah, this is, it's specifically for young people. So I'm targeting millennials here and young adults. And so this is only for you guys because as you get older, it's actually okay. But bonds, and they usually show 1 to 2% return right now. So bonds are not a good investment right now. I mean, they're better. Here's what I will say. They are better than just keeping your money in your checking account. Saying that, they're still not as good as stocks, and they're still not as good as just 100 other different things you can go into. Bonds right now aren't keeping up with inflation for the most part. So you can take out, let's say you take out a bond for minimums usually $5,000, but we'll go with $1,000. You take out a bond, $1,000, it gives you a 1% return, meaning you earn $10 after the bond is finished. Meanwhile, inflation's at roughly 2% right now, so you're actually losing value by investing, you're losing money by investing in bonds when you're young. But when you're older, it's a safe way to kind of keep your money. When you have hundreds of thousands of dollars and you don't want to be risky, bonds are good. Bonds are super, super safe and stable, but if you're looking to build wealth in the long run, bonds are not a good way to go. So for young people, that's why I don't recommend bonds. That's why in my stock market course, I don't even talk about bonds. You shouldn't be going into bonds when you're young. When you're older, you can think about it. While you're in your 20s or even 30s, don't even think about it. So we're going to move on here to, specifically, we're going to talk about high fees in these, but we're going to talk about mutual funds. And I don't want to mention ETFs because ETFs are good for the most part, but I'm just going to mention the high fee ones. So mutual funds and ETFs, and then in brackets I'll put high fee, HF. So a lot of mutual funds can be good. A lot of them are good, but those that are actively managed that take away 1% of your investment every year, those are not good. And I heard I was reading this article recently that said that it may say that they take 1% fee, but in actuality it's about 1.3% to 1.6% per year of your total investment, which is absolutely ridiculous. So anything that has high fees, that's a mutual fund or an ETF, stay away from those. Saying that, the vast majority of ETFs these days are very low fees. Look at Vanguard's, which their fees are 0.1% to 0.5% to 0.8%. That won't hurt you too much, but anything above the number 1, anything 1% or higher in terms of fees in mutual funds and ETFs, don't even look at it. Just move on, because in the long run, that 1% can be the difference between you having a portfolio worth $500,000 and $800,000. Seriously, 1 percentage point. I made that video last year, I think, where I talked about how 1 percentage point can change your life, or I think that's what it was called. And I was doing the math. After 40 years, it can be the difference between you being a millionaire and having $100,000 in the bank. Just 1 percentage point. So in the long run, while you are young, don't go into high fee mutual funds and ETFs. Look for low fee ones. A lot of mutual funds are good if they have low fees, and same with ETFs. So look into those if you're investing in stocks. Yeah, we're gonna move on here. So number 7, oh yeah. I don't know why people think that these are good investments, like collectibles / art. I mean, this is a very broad category, and I know that some art and collectibles will be worth it. So I actually mentioned this in a video months ago, and I was covering different ways you can invest your money. There are some ways where you can invest in collectibles and art and have it be a good investment in the long run. But most of the time, people don't know what they're doing and you end up losing money. So collectibles and art are generally things that you should stay away from in terms of investments. So again, we're talking about the worst ways to invest here. So generally speaking, collectibles and art are not a good investment, but they can be in very select few amount of cases. Now we're going to move on here to the last one that I want to cover here. The worst way to invest money for millennials is nothing. That's the worst investment you can make, is not doing anything. And I mentioned this tons and tons of times, all my investment videos, that if you were to make $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year, and you were to invest even a few $1,000s of that every single year compared to someone who didn't, you will end up being a millionaire if you start doing that when you're 20, and the person who didn't will end up being paycheck to paycheck for their entire life. So by simply investing in put it in an ETF, like an S&P 500 low fee ETF, just put all your money in there, and that's it. Eventually, that'll grow over time. Reinvest that money, and you will potentially be a millionaire when you're older. Just by doing that, just by putting away a few $1,000s a year. Maybe, we'll say $5,000 to $10,000 a year over the course of 40 years, you're a millionaire. That's all it takes. You don't got to be a CEO. You don't got to be a hedge fund manager to become a millionaire. You just got to invest properly and not spend way too much money. So that's what I wanted to cover in this video. So just to kind of wrap it up here, what your parents told you, primary residence, that's generally, it depends on your area, but for the most part, it's not an investment. It's more of a neutral to bad investment. It can be good, like I mentioned, but it's not great. That's a misconception. Keeping your money in a checking account or savings account, that's not a good investment. You actually end up losing money. Anything that rusts, rots, or depreciates, so I'm talking mainly cars, equipment, technology, anything that doesn't increase your income significantly, that's not a good investment. So number 4, penny stocks. I don't want to talk about that. Number 5, penny stocks are bad. Number 5, bonds. That's good when you're older, when you want a stable source of additional income and you don't want all that money in a savings or checking account. Bonds are good when you're older, but when you're young, stay away. Number 6, high fee ETFs and mutual funds. That'll kill your wealth in the long run. Arts and collectibles, unless you really know what you're doing and you're a professional at that, stay away. Number 8, doing nothing. Just, if you don't invest your money, what's the point? That's a bad investment. So anyways, that's going to wrap this video up. I'd like to thank you very much for watching. You're all very beautiful people. I'll see you guys in the next video.